Hello, Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group. Okay. I would like to share with everyone here that I have been absolutely torn since the last time I saw everybody. Hi, family. Okay, why have I been torn? Because today we are so fortunate to have Dr. Robert Ostfeld here, Tim and Heather Kaufman, Jason Cohen, and Dr. Paul Thomas speaking tonight. But it meant that I would have to speak less. I know that's very disappointing to me and maybe a little happy for you guys. But what do I do? You know, what do I do? I'm speaking less. I don't like speaking less. I like speaking. If you're willing to help, please always email Paul at pbnsg.org. Our volunteers are what surrounds our organization. We have added some small groups in Toledo. I went to one in Flushing and had just an amazing time. Yeah. Go Flushing. All right. And how could I not mention that? So you understand my dilemma. Less updates, less jokes. Yet I received an email the other day from Dr. Ryan Abood, who I met in the he was a second-year med student 4 years ago, because this is our 4-year birthday at PBNSG, and he was in the first class of young medical students. Today, he is in his resident program in Detroit, and he emailed me and he said, I want to start a small group downtown Detroit at my clinic. And that was such a great moment, because that was the whole purpose of working with young medical students, is so someday they could help their patients understand the benefits of nutrition before pills and procedures. How can I not mention that to everybody today? There's a vibrant culture with many food choices, and quite honestly, it's important to understand that our website, just look at the culinary section. We've added, I think we got 16 to 18 chefs from all over the country, led by our culinary curator, Denise Kling-Peltro. How can I not mention that? I want to give everybody a restaurant challenge. The restaurant challenge is you go out to dinner, you look at their menu, see what foods that they can make that are plant-based, go to the owner, the head chef, and just say, hey, we want to make you a plant-based preferred restaurant. And if you get them to do it, please email Paul at pbnsg.org. We've got about 28 restaurants. Why can't we have 50? So we have so many other great choices and places to go to. So it's my challenge to you, the members, please. All right, now, I know you've been waiting for this. So without any further ado, I have a question for everybody here. Raise your hand if you like tea. Okay, what tea is both bitter and sweet? Liver tea. Wrong. Reality. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Why couldn't the pirate learn the alphabet? Wrong. These are tough jokes. Wrong. Because he always got lost at sea. Your moaning is my gratitude. Thank you so much. All right, you probably want 2 more. Okay, I won't disappoint. Where does the electrical cord go to shop? The outlet mall. Oh, thank you very much. And okay, okay, hold on. Oh, why is it impossible for your nose not to be 12 inches long? Okay. Because it would be a foot. Thank you. And, well, I've got about 40 more. Okay, now, I want to say again, thank you everybody for being here. It's going to be a lot of fun. I would like now to introduce Dr. Paul Thomas. Plum Health is making healthcare personal again. Wow, crazy, huh? A doctor who wants to spend time with their patient. Okay, they deliver affordable and accessible healthcare services through a membership model. This allows them to get to know you. A doctor who wants to get to know you. Sounds right, doesn't it? Doesn't it sound right? That sounds right to me. Your health history, your health goals. Plum Health listens to you, the patient. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Dr. Paul Thomas. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for coming out tonight. It's really a privilege to be selected to be a speaker with so many great people here, such a great lineup. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and thank you, Paul, for the invitation and for the wonderful introduction. And we'll just take a pause, a breather while this gets rigged up. All right, beautiful. So we're a plant-based group, so the name is familiar to you, Plum. We're Plum Health. We do direct primary care, and we deliver affordable, accessible health care in the city of Detroit and beyond. Let's see. So I'm a family medicine physician, which means that I get to really know and understand who my patients are. That's my job. I'm a family doc. I take care of families. We get to know each other. I went to Wayne State University School of Medicine. Nothing for that? Woo! Yes, my man. I did my residency at Oakwood, which is now called Beaumont. And like I said, I practice in Southwest Detroit in a clinic called Plum Health. Okay, so I believe that healthcare should be affordable and accessible for everyone. Okay, that's what I believe. And I do that in my model because we use a membership model. I get to spend an hour with my patients. I get to know who they are and what they want to achieve. If they want to lose weight or get onto a plant-based diet or lower their blood pressure, we take the time to figure out how we can get there. But that's not how medicine is in America. That's not what we're used to. Do you know the average duration of a visit is about 8 minutes? 8 minutes, right? What can you possibly do with 8 minutes? And you've all been here. You go to the doctor, you wait an hour, you see them for 8, maybe 10 minutes, and then you got to go talk to maybe a nutritionist, and then maybe go have your blood drawn, then go to the pharmacy. It all becomes this rigmarole, so to speak. That's not how I want to practice. That's not how I want to deliver the healthcare. I want to be proud of the healthcare that I deliver, and I want this sort of care for my friends, family, and neighbors, and I want to treat my neighbors like I might treat a dear friend or a family member. So I'm going to tell you a little story about my grandpa Jim. He's a World War II veteran and also a retired Detroit police officer, and he's also one of my best friends, right? He's a great guy. But Jim has toenails like you would not believe. Okay, so he went to his primary care doctor, really lovely young lady, but she only has 8 minutes, right? And in that 8 minutes, she had enough time to print out a referral that he would take to his now podiatrist, right? But Jim's on a fixed income. He has Medicare, and his Medicare only covers primary care, not specialty care. So about 3 weeks later, he gets a bill for $350, which hurts him financially. And then I'm upset because it's like, Grandpa Jim, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me about the toenail thing? So he told me, and I went over and trimmed his toenails, and we got him back to doing his favorite thing, which is going out for walks. Now, I bring this up because Jim is stubborn. Like, he's the type of guy that doesn't want to bring up another issue because he's concerned about the cost. And like I said, I want healthcare to be affordable and accessible for everyone, so I don't want people to worry about those costs. Now, I've always known that I wanted to be a primary care doctor, a family doctor, and that's a lie. I actually wanted to be a Ninja Turtle. And this is me on my 4th birthday, blowing out the candles and wishing to become a Ninja Turtle. But when I realized that I was not an amphibian, I had to come up with an alternative career plan. And so I started volunteering at a clinic in Detroit called Cass Clinic. I was working shoulder to shoulder with medical students, and there was an attending doctor who was fantastic. He knew exactly what to do with anything that came his way. And I wanted to have that same skill too, and that's why I became a doctor. When I went to medical school at Wayne State, I realized that Detroit was severely underserved medically. All of these pink areas on this map are medically underserved areas in the city of Detroit. And as you can see, virtually all of Detroit is pink. So we were idealistic medical students, and we were going to solve this problem, so we built an outdoor medical clinic at the Heidelberg Project. And we were going to solve this problem. It was the physical representation of the type of care that we wanted to provide to the community. And it's still there today. It's still standing. And this was a part of our guiding belief, that we wanted healthcare to be affordable and accessible for everyone. But we couldn't really see a way through it. And as I got deeper and deeper into my training, I was seeing more and more and more patients in less and less time. And it got to the point where I was only seeing, a patient in 15 minutes, and it just felt so inadequate. And that's when I found out about direct primary care, and a group of doctors who was courageously going forward and saying that having 2,400 patients and seeing 24 visits a day was unacceptable. We need to cut down our panel to about 500 patients and only see 5 visits a day. That way we can spend an hour with people. We can call people back. We can text them. We can develop those care plans and ask those questions and do the reading to find out what's at the root and really attack those issues. Now, this is a growing thing across the country. When I started my practice in 2016, there were only about 350 doctors doing this. And today, there's about 800 doctors who are doing direct primary care across the country. And they're of all stripes. And these are some of my colleagues. I'm super proud to be a direct primary care doctor with them. Now, in Detroit, there's only one. It's me. And I hope to see this sort of medical practice grow. But there we are, Southwest Detroit, Plum Health, direct primary care. Now, there is demand for this. If you think that there's only a couple crazy people who want healthcare like this, these are the people. Each red dot is someone who said, I want direct primary care. And in Southwest Detroit, in Southeast Detroit, that demand is strong. Now, let's take a step back and see why healthcare has gotten so crazy. And it's because of these middlemen. When you pay $1 for your primary care services, the insurance company takes about 40 cents, and then about half of what remains goes to the overhead. So your doctor's left with about 30 cents. In a real-world example, if you have pneumonia, 130 bucks. 50 to the insurance company, 40 to the overhead, doctor's left with $40. You might be thinking, who cares, right? Doctors make enough money anyways. But the issue is that because they're making less income, they're seeing more and more and more patients in less and less time. So you're getting those 8-minute appointments. What we do with Plum Health is we remove all of these middlemen, and now when you pay the $50 a month, we're able to use that money with a very little overhead and spend all of that time with you to really get down to your issues, to listen to you, to understand you, and I even make house calls as a part of my practice. We have gotten some good press. You might have seen us on Channel 4, WDIV. I was a recent speaker at TEDx Detroit, which was awesome. And you might be wondering, is this legal? There is a line item in the Affordable Care Act that makes this legal, and it is legal in the state of Michigan. And that's my time. My name is Paul Thomas. I'm a family medicine doctor with Plum Health, and thank you for taking a moment to listen to what I have to say about direct primary care.
I'm Shannon Farrell, for anybody, oh my God, that doesn't know who I am. I'm a nurse and I run a cardiac rehabilitation unit. I first met Jason Cohen when he came to visit me in New Orleans for the American Association for Cardiovascular Rehab Professionals Conference. He left his water bottle with me. So I actually flew it home and he picked it up yesterday from me. So he is a photographer, videographer, filmmaker who is, he runs a Big Change of Film podcast, which is where we have a conversation with people that have incredible stories of weight loss and inspiration. There's 85 episodes, and in the audience right now, 7 of us have filmed episodes. I just returned, he's awesome, very awesome. I just returned home from the Holistic Holiday at Sea cruise. I highly recommend it. It was a 10-day cruise. You could eat gluten-free, oil-free, plant-based, vegan, no SOS if you follow those plans. So I really recommend it. And Dr. Kahn is here too, so I really recommend it. If you have any questions, please ask me. When I was there at the cruise, the last thing I'll say is I met people from all over the world that were plant-based and in various forms of their journey, and they all said to me, we wish we had something like you have in Detroit. We just want friends that we can share our journey with. And I thank Paul Chatlin, who's one of my very best friends, for creating this. Thank you. Jason Cohen.
My name is Jason Cohen. First off, thank you guys for having me. I think we have a picture of what I used to look like, but I used to look a little different. I weighed about 120, 125 pounds more than I do now. And when I was around 26 or so, I looked down at the scale. I was 297 pounds and resolved to never cross that threshold. And around the same time, a friend gave me a bicycle, which my first thought was, why are you giving a 300-pound man a bicycle? But little did I know that was going to change my life. And over the last 7 or so years, I've been able to lose the weight, keep it off. And at some point, I think you realize that part of this journey, part of the reason why I've been successful is because of people that are in this room specifically, or people like that. And you have to pay it forward. You have to give it back. And I've been a filmmaker, photographer for a while, and so I tried to figure out what I could do to use my skills, to use my resources, to kind of help others. And so I have two things that I'm kind of involved with. The first is a podcast YouTube series. I've interviewed several PBNSG members. I've got 85 episodes, and we're at just over 11,000 pounds lost between 85 people or so. Thank you. And then I've got a film that I'm working on, and it's a feature-length film following 4 individuals, 2 of which are here tonight. Tim Kaufman, you'll hear from shortly. Also Denise Norris, who lost 235 pounds. And I've been following these guys and seeing their journey, and my goal is that no matter who you are, whether you're in this audience, you're in the audience that sees the full film, that you realize from these 4 people that there's no hurdle that you can't overcome, that these people have overcome sickness, they've overcome personal stress, no support from their family, abuse. They've run the gamut, and really, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, it's never too late to start. It's possible for anybody. If it's possible for me, if it's possible for these guys, it's possible for you as well. And so I'm going to share with you guys the latest / hopefully last teaser for the film. I haven't shown this anywhere yet, so you guys are the first ones to see it, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Over the last, say, 2.5, 3 years or so, I've lost about between 200 and 220 pounds. All through my childhood, everybody would say, oh, you're gonna be just like your Bam Bam, because I was the oldest, right? Oh, you're gonna be just like your Bam Bam, you're gonna be big just like your Bam Bam. So it becomes this thing, like a predestiny. I'm gonna be just like him. That's how you get to be 400 pounds. You start identifying with big. That's who I am, just like my name is Josh.
I spent most of my adult life at 268 pounds and a size 24. And now I'm 140 pounds and a size 6. I was obese most of my life, and I didn't see a way out. I didn't think that there was a way out from where I was. I was stuck.
At 400 pounds, everything is harder. I was eating fast food normally 3 times a day. I think I figured it out one time, but it was up to, I guarantee you some days I was eating 10,000 calories, I guarantee it. I knew I had to do something. I knew if I didn't do something, I was gonna be dead. But if I had any control, the least little bit, I need to go after that, I need to chase it.
I remember when I was at the doctor's office, they weighed me, you know, like you always do, and the scale didn't register a number, so they're like, we have to put you on our freight scale. And I remember stepping on this huge scale and saw the numbers pop up, 421. And at that point, I pretty much just gave up. For probably the next 6 months, I binged eat probably just about every day, and I'm pretty sure I got close to 500 pounds. At that time, at my super, super heaviest, my 8X shirts were starting to get tight.
For that first, say, 100 pounds this time, it was almost identical to what I'd always done. Sweat more, eat less. And because I want to get to a place on the scale. Then I got into running, and then all the while, it's all becoming more and more and more for me. Feeling better about me. Yeah, I lost some weight. I got married. I got a degree.
I started to feel massive pain everywhere in my body, all of my joints, muscles, everything in my body hurt, even my skin hurt. And one night I was lying in bed and still not feeling well, and my son, Michael, came in. He was 6 at the time, and I looked at him and I started thinking, you know, my goodness, what if I'm not here for him and for my daughters, and you know, my husband's gonna be the one to raise my kids. That's how poorly that I was feeling, and I was thinking, what if I'm not here for him? And he turned around and he looked at me, and I just looked at his face and his sweet face, and I just said, I can't leave this kid and my other children. And that's when I just prayed and I begged God to help me to heal my body that I'd abused with food. And I decided that it was enough and I had to make a change.
I got Charlie in 2009. Charlie was at his most active state as a puppy. He was the one that was really wanting to go on the walks and do that kind of stuff, and I really had no energy to do it. I wanted to do it. I knew that if I wanted to be the type of person that was being able to go on a hike with their dog and kayak with their dog, that I was going to have to lose the weight to be able to do those things. And he really seriously was my motivation for wanting to lose the weight.
Some of the changes I started making were things like I would still go get my 2 breakfast sandwiches that I so loved, but I would grab a banana. And I think once you get that momentum going, then it starts like, what are the possibilities? You know, adding more nutrition in my diet instead of burgers. I started feeling better. Like, I feel super good.
Quality of life compared to 3 or 4 years ago is almost uncomparable. Whereas before, it was like, not only was I heavy physically, I was heavy emotionally as well. I'm passionate about sharing my story because I know change can be made. And if it can be made in one person, it can be made in an army of people.
I did not want to be the cause of my own demise. I didn't want, if I died, and for my kids a couple of years down the line to look back and say, you know, my mom could have been here, but she was obese, she got sick, she didn't take care of herself, and now we don't have a mother. I mean, I know people say, well, anything can happen, you can die, and anything can. I can go outside and get hit by a bus. But I didn't want to be the cause of my own demise. I wanted to do my best to live as healthily and as long as I could and to be there for my kids and my family.
I feel like I am a walking miracle because when I was almost 500 pounds, I really didn't think that there was any way to change it. It was too big of a mountain in front of me. I didn't think that there was any way up it. So for me to sit here now, you know, 180 something pounds and wearing like anywhere from a size 8 to a 12, like to me, that's a miracle. The one thing that I would want people to take away from my story, my transformation, my journey, is that what I thought was once an impossible task is now possible. And I want people to hang on to that, even if it's the smallest tiny hope in the back of their mind that says, maybe if it's possible for her, it's possible for me.
5 years ago, Heather was putting my socks and shoes on, and last week we just climbed the highest mountain on the East Coast together. I really hope people can see that regardless of how deep the hole that they're in, or how impossible it seems to change, that change comes from a decision. And regardless of where they are, that change is out there for anyone.
First off, we do have Denise here, who's from the area, so if you wouldn't mind, stand up. This is Denise Norris. She lost 235 plus pounds.
How's everybody doing? Awesome. Hey, I could stand up here for about 10 or 15 minutes and talk about Tim, but I'm going to let him take care of himself. I'll give a little introduction, but I consider Tim a good friend, and you know what they say, behind every good man is a good woman. And Heather, his wife, is just a phenomenal person, and the support that they give each other is just incredible. And really, they are. I don't mean to like put anybody down if I like know anybody, but they're the most inspiring couple that I have ever come across because of what they're giving back and how they want to help their local community, and what they're doing is just an incredible job. So I commend you, Heather, for supporting Tim, and Tim for Heather. All right. Tim Kaufman was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS, in his early 20s. He was in chronic pain for most of his life. By the time he had reached the age of 37, he was addicted to fentanyl, alcohol, and fast food, a lot of fast food. But I was in the pizza business, and he would have been my prime customer because I understand he ate pizza like a lot. At over 400 pounds, he was unable to perform simple daily tasks. He had many chronic health issues and was almost immobile. He had lost his interest in life and had almost given up. Tim started a journey to regain his health. He started to change one small thing at a time. He is now an athlete that thrives on a plant-based food lifestyle and leads a healthy, happy, productive, and very active life that is free of all medications that he was once on. Absolutely. He was on a lot, and I'm sure that he'll tell you about that. His passion is to spread the message that anyone can transition to a healthy, active lifestyle and dramatically change their life regardless of their current situation or their size. Tim has appeared on podcasts from around the world and has been filmed for an upcoming movie. A little bit of what you just saw. He has been featured in Runner's World magazine, People magazine, the Buffalo newspaper, and many other media outlets, including a recent segment on Good Morning America. Tim uses his platform as an international speaker to educate, inform, and motivate people about plant-based nutrition, addiction recovery, overcoming physical challenges, and emotional and spiritual wellness. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend, Tim Kaufman.
So I was going to open up with a joke, but after Paul's performance, I think I'm going to leave it alone because I can't top that. So instead of telling a joke, I just want to say that I was thinking what to say when I got up here, and I can't imagine what this world would be looking like if we had this model of PBNSG in every city in America. Like, it would be like so huge. It's unbelievable. So I really love what you guys do here. Keep up the good work. Just for my curiosity, who is 100% plant-based in here right now? Nice, very nice. I was hoping everybody would raise their hand because then I could go home, but. So I'm actually going to start my watch. One time I did a 15-minute talk for an insurance company, and I was there for over 2.5 hours. So my watch is going, and I'm on the clock now. So thank you for the awesome introduction, Dave. And I am Tim Kaufman. And, you know, my story has been shared everywhere. Some of it kind of feels like a fluke, and some of it doesn't. But I have a super, super cool life. And I'm a super busy guy. And there's only one reason why I spend so much time doing these talks, teaching classes, teaching cooking classes. I do it because I know what happened to me is out there for anyone. Everything I did is 100% repeatable. There's nothing special about me. People say, I wish I had your willpower. If I had willpower, I would have never been 400 pounds and an addict and an alcoholic. I did not have willpower. What happened is I got educated. And that's the cool thing about what we do, right? Like, anybody is out there. And the other cool thing is it doesn't matter if you're 500 pounds or you have 20 pounds to lose or you have no weight at all to lose. It's all the same process. And it's just a matter of your body catching up to where it should be. One time, the news actually coined me as saying, because I said there was nothing special about me, and they coined me saying that I'm literally just a fat guy that ate apples. So I'm going to take you for a little walk through my life, and I'm going to go back a little bit. And the truth is, I put this picture here because I like to show off what a cool mullet that I had when I was in high school. And my high school kids love this when I do these talks. But this is actually my wife, Heather, who is here, and she's a pretty awesome lady. And yeah, you can clap. She's awesome. We met in high school. We were high school sweethearts. And I grew up in a town called Alden. It's about 20 miles east of Buffalo, and it's a farming community. So I grew up working on a farm. My whole life was meat and dairy. That's what we did. We actually used to make all our own sausage. Avid hunter. I've hunted my whole life. So life was very rural. We have cornfields all around us. They're getting a little more built up now, but so this was me about the time I started working on a farm. And the more active I got in manual labor, the more klutziness that started showing up. You know, I would roll my ankle a lot, or, you know, blow out my knee a lot. And we just kind of chalked it up as that I was accident prone or I was a klutz. And as I got older, into my early 20s, I went from the farm and I got a job in industry, in a manufacturing industry. And I started working over my head more than I was used to. And every time I'd go up to reach something high, my shoulder would actually dislocate. And it got to the point where if I sneezed, my shoulder would actually pop right out of me. And I'd have to put it back in the socket. And so I knew something was wrong. So I went to the doctor, and he said, well, we have to do this procedure called an arthroplasty. And basically, they cut a slip back there, they pull all the tendons and ligaments out, and then they fold them over each other and stitch it back up to kind of tighten the whole capsule up. What they noticed when they got in there, they were pulling on all this stuff, and it was like bubble gum. It was very stretchy. And I was diagnosed with this disease called Ehlers-Danlos. EDS for short. And basically, the collagen in my body is kind of messed up, so everything is super stretchy. And this is what was happening, why I can, you know, I could walk on uneven ground and just turn my ankles. Like, but one thing that the doctor said, actually, when Jason came to interview him, he said that it was like an accomplishment every 30 days that I came in and I wasn't in a wheelchair. And he said that it actually had nothing to do with my weight. It was just from this disease, was getting progressively worse. So what happened, looking back, I kind of can see it, but I didn't see it at the time. But I walked out of that surgery. It was a pretty extensive surgery. It took way longer than they thought, and I was in a lot of pain. And I walked out of the hospital with prescription of Lortab. And I had been in pain most of my life, and maybe I really never knew it. I just thought it was like normal. And I can remember the first time I started taking those Lortabs, I felt so good. Because dealing with chronic pain, you know, if you've ever been in pain, and there's kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, but if you have chronic pain where you go to bed with it, you wake up with it, it does something to you. And all you want to do is get out of pain. And I felt that feeling that I was out of pain. If you know anything about narcotics, they have really, really good effects. And then the more you take them, the less effects they have, and it just keeps building. So I started on this path of, you know, the Lortabs, and then we went to, you know, Percocets and Oxys. And before I knew it, I was on a drug called fentanyl. And fentanyl, like, it wasn't, back then, it wasn't like really in the media yet. People didn't really know what it was. But the fentanyl was kind of a game changer for me as far as managing the pain, because instead of having a pill where you get these highs and lows, it was actually a transdermal patch. So I pretty much had a constant supply of fentanyl when I went to bed and when I got up. But on top of that, I would take breakthrough drugs, so I was still taking all the other painkillers as well. And I was still hurting. You know, it would work for a while, and then after a couple months, we'd up the dose, up the dose, up the dose, and it was just constant, you know, upping doses, hit the max, try something else. Well, we couldn't try anything more powerful than fentanyl. And so I did something that I never ever thought I would do. I grew up in a household that we never had alcohol in the house, but I was on my way home and I had been up for about 5 days. And it's the same with the chronic pain. If you go without sleep for day after day after day, it turns you into something that you don't want to be. And I just couldn't deal with it anymore. I just wanted to go rest. I wanted to be out of pain. I wanted to escape. So I stopped and I picked up some vodka on the way home. And that was probably the fastest slope I had ever been on. I came home and I drank like a whole glass of it and went to bed. And I went to sleep. And you know, it escalated so fast that at my very worst, I was drinking a liter of vodka every single night before I went to bed. I was on the max dose of fentanyl, and I was probably taking 15 to 20 tablets like right before bed, just to try to sleep. And by rights, I should have OD'd. I should have been dead. And along with that feeling, that opioid feeling, I also got the same effects with fast food. Again, going back to my worst, I would stop at fast food places at least 4 times a day. And it wasn't like once in a while. It was built into my routine. We would eat pizza and wings 4 nights a week. We'd usually go out 1 or 2 nights a week. We never ate food that we cooked at home. And it just became this thing. And so these are all my comforts. This was all my escapes. That's all I wanted to do. And before I knew it, my life was spiraling out of control. I was a mess. I would do as little as I possibly could and then escape as much as I could. And I kind of listened to what the doctors told me. They said with this disease that I should, keep my body super quiet. And I had very limited life left in my joints, so I need to conserve it. So anytime I was sitting, they told me to make sure my arms are propped up and make sure everything's supported. A bunch of splints and air casts and crutches and canes and all sorts of stuff. And so by the time I was 38 years old, I was over 400 pounds. We don't really know how far over 400. My doctor says I was well over. I don't know what that means. But I was super sick, and I could hardly get in and out of my truck anymore. And I put these pictures up here, and I think people can understand the physical stuff. Like you can take whatever the balance of 400 pounds is, strap it on your back and try to walk upstairs. And I think people get that. I think you can understand how hard it is to pick something off the ground or get up out of a chair even tie your shoes. But what people don't see, and I can look in my eyes in these, and every time I see them, I see that hopeless look, but there is such an emotional thing that goes along with this. Like, that's where the pain really laid, was in the emotional part. I mean, Heather and I got married super young. We had kids very early. And here I'm supposed to protect and provide and be this big tough guy. And she's out mowing the lawn, trying to juggle 2 toddlers around while I'm sitting in a chair with my feet up because I can't walk. And it hurt bad. And, here's a couple more pictures of what I looked like. I mean, every one of these, you can look into my eyes and see how much pain I was in. And people always want to know, well, what was the catalyst that made you change? And I don't think there was one thing, but I can go back and I can talk about a few things that kind of happened, a few like tipping points for me. And one of them was a phone call that we had received. Heather's mom was an awesome lady, and she was just like a second mom to me. And we got a phone call. She was sick. She just wasn't feeling better. And she went into the doctors, and she was diagnosed with leukemia. And we had heard, other people got cancer, but it was always, other people. It was never us. We'd never been, devastated with this hitting this close to home. And so life changed, like in an instant. And instead of me trying to, see, where I was going to get alcohol from and where I could get, extra medicine from, it became who's going to pick up the kids tonight so I can go be with mom at the hospital. We have this facility called Roswell in Buffalo, and it's a huge cancer treatment center. And I can remember walking in there to see her, and she was fighting. She was just fighting to live till tomorrow. And I remember she opened her eyes and she goes, "How's your knees?" And I was crushed. She's trying to live till tomorrow, and she's worried about my knees. It shows you what kind of lady she was. But it also showed me how selfish I was being, because I was walking away from the hospital, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people that not only wouldn't walk out of that hospital ever again, but would do anything to hop into my broken legs. And I started getting gratitude. I started watching these kids that were undergoing treatment in the pediatric wing. And I started realizing that I was always focused on what was wrong. I was always focused on being bitter, and I never focused on what I already had. So I think one of the tipping points for me was finding gratitude. And as we're dealing with this, my best friend in the whole world, my dad taught me everything. We did everything together. As we're dealing with Heather's mom, we got a phone call that my dad had a cough. We thought he had pneumonia or something. He was diagnosed with renal cancer, and he was given 6 months to live. My dad made it 6 weeks, and he passed away. And shortly after that, Heather's mom lost her battle. Her leukemia turned into lymphoma and then a brain tumor, and she lost her battle. So we lost two of our most dear people in the entire world. And, you know, you try to move on, you try to get things back to normal, especially for the kids, to get, you know, back to softball and basketball and all the stuff that, you know, makes life busy. And I can remember one day I was sitting in a chair, and I'm a teacher, so I was getting ready for school, and I couldn't get my socks and shoes on that day. And I can remember this day, I looked down into Heather's eyes, and she wasn't doing it in like a condescending way, but she put my socks on and kind of patted my leg a couple times like you would a little kid. And she said, "You're all set." And I looked down, and I could just see the raw pain that was still there. And for a split second, I thought, I'm next. Like, I'm the next one she's going to have to bury. And I don't know as if I cared that I was going to die soon. What I cared more about is she would have to go through all that planning and all the brunch and all that kind of stuff again for me. And it just would have tore her apart. And I knew that I had to do something. And honestly, my goal was not to lose weight. It was not to change my life. It was literally to live one more year. That was my mission. I just want to make it one more year to get space in between these funerals. So I did some research. I went on YouTube, and I'm like, well, how do I do this? How do I get weight off myself? So, I mean, if I wasn't dead next year, how was Heather going to take care of me? If I didn't die, I'd for certainly be in a wheelchair. How's she going to push me around and stuff? So I knew I had to look for something like extreme. And I did some research, and I found these bariatric surgeries that they had. And I watched some YouTube videos, and I called Heather into the office, and I'm like, you got to see this stuff. These guys, you know, they're 400 pounds, they're as big as me, and in a year they're running marathons, and they're super healthy, and I thought this was exactly what I needed to do. And so I called a company in Buffalo. I got all the paperwork. I got a big packet in the mail. I filled it all out. I went to some classes, and the last thing I had to do was take it to my doctor and have him sign off on it. But to my surprise, he said no. And it was the first time he had ever refused someone the surgery in his career. And he also told me at the time that it will be probably the last time. And the reason why he couldn't approve the surgery, I was super sick. I was on a ton of medicine. And one of the problems was, if I go under, how much anesthesia are they going to need? I have so many narcotics in my body. What would I do after the surgery? In that day, my resting heart rate was 125. And I can remember bargaining with him. He goes, you're like borderline stroke right now, and if we can't get your heart rate down, I'm calling 911. And so I can remember bargaining with him. He goes, you got to get it down to 100. I'm like, well, what about 110? And so I can remember laying on that table, trying to be as still as I could, and my heart rate came down to 115, 110. But my blood pressure was 255 over 115. My cholesterol was over 300, and I was on medicine for all this stuff. You know, I was on max dose of 2 different blood pressure medicines, and I was in bad shape. So he would not sign off. And I can remember leaving the doctor's office that day thinking, I'm dead. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do anymore. So I got on my knees and I prayed, but I had prayed my whole life for miracles. And I had watched my family do this too. Help me to have strength and, help me to lose 100 pounds or whatever. But something hit me this day that what if I already had the strength and I just needed the knowledge to figure out how to do this? So I said, I'm not ready to quit yet. So I decided I'm just going to make one small change at a time. And I started doing things like probably most Americans do. I started restricting calories. I started swapping out the red meat for the turkey. When turkeys would go on sale, we'd buy a bunch of them. Changed to low-fat dairy and things like that. And then, I saw changes. I'm 400 pounds. Pretty much anything I do to my diet, I'm going to see some kind of results. But as I'm losing weight, I'm not really feeling much better. I'm still taking all the medicines and stuff. But I sat down and on Netflix, I'm scrolling through, and I came across this film called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. Now, I had no clue what this film was about. I just knew that I was fat, sick, and nearly dead. So I was curious. And after I watched it, I could not believe, first of all, it's super inspirational. If you don't know about the film, Joe Cross comes to the U.S. from Australia. He goes on a 60-day juice fast where he consumes nothing but fruits and vegetable juice out of his juicer. And by the end of the film, he has lost 60 pounds. He's off most of his medicine. And, by the time the credits rolled, I already ordered a juicer. And the truth is, I had no clue what was going on. I just knew that I wanted what he had. That's what I knew. And I didn't care how he did it. I would have done anything to get what Joe Cross had. And so the first of the year was coming up, and I made a New Year's resolution that I was going to do 30 days on this juice fast. And the first 3 days were hell. Like, I wanted to die. In fact, there were days I just went to bed because I just couldn't deal, with not eating. And then by day 4, I wasn't as hungry. By the 5th day, something happened to me that hadn't happened in years. And I tell this story so many times, I still get goosebumps every time I tell it. I woke up in the same place I went to bed. That hadn't happened. Like, I hadn't had a night's sleep in years and years and years. And that's 5 days on a juice fast. Bless you. And little by little, I started seeing changes. And a couple more days would go by, and I'd be like, I forgot to take my medicine. I forgot to take my Indocin. I forgot, and I'm starting to feel better. I'm starting to sleep better. I'm starting to wake up earlier and not be as groggy. And because I watched this, it got us thinking about buying stuff. So, super fun story. The first time I was going to juice, I was all set, and I went down to a local grocery store, small grocery store, and I picked up my produce, and I came back, and I put it in the juicer, and I got about 2 spoonfuls of juice. So I'd never bought vegetables before. If I could have put tortillas, pizza rolls, or something in there, it would have been fine. But so we had to go, now what do we do? Like, I got to go start finding out how to shop. So the one thing that it did do is it showed us how to shop. We started shopping at farmers markets. We started finding, produce outlets. Well, I actually started buying carrots where the wholesalers sell them to the restaurants. So that's, things just kept adding up like that. And then because I watched this, more stuff popped up. And the film Forks Over Knives came up in my queue next. And I watched that movie, and I've never done this before. When it got to the end, I started it over and watched it again. I had just lost 2 of my favorite people in the whole world, and here Dr. Campbell's telling me that he can turn cancer on and off. I was so angry. I thought, this movie is either total BS or somebody should go to jail. I was so mad and so frustrated, but at the same time, I learned a ton out of it. And I thought to myself, this juice fast isn't sustainable. I'm coming to the end of my 30 days. What if I just take what I was putting in the juicer and I start eating it? And the truth is, I make a joke out of this, but if Joe Cross would have put raccoon poop in that juicer, I would be eating raccoon poop right now. That's the truth, because I didn't care what was in there. It wasn't, I didn't sign up to be plant-based. I didn't even know what a vegan was, to be honest with you. But what started making sense to me, the more I thought about it, and there's a bunch of science stuff, and I save that stuff for the doctors, but what started making sense to me is I had been an outdoorsman my whole life. And my wife loves feeding the birds. So I don't know where she gets all the bird seed from, but there's pallets of it, and she's always putting it out to the birds. And the birds are eating it all day, anytime they want. It's always there. She doesn't ration it. She doesn't put it in little serving dishes. They eat all day. And it hit me. I don't have one bird that's on a little scooter in the backyard. None of the birds got so fat where they couldn't fly. But they're eating all day. So maybe it wasn't that I was eating too much food. I was eating the wrong food. I had hunted my whole life. I had never seen a deer with a muffin top, ever. We have 650 acres of corn across the street. The deer eat all day. They have an unlimited supply of corn. I never saw a fat one. Fishing, I've been fishing my whole life. I never pulled a largemouth bass out of a pond that had cankles. And it made sense. This made perfect sense that when nature does its thing, everything, nothing is hugely overweight. Now, there's fat dogs, but that's because we help them get fat, right? So this stuff started making sense to me. And I stumbled. I can remember chewing tobacco, having kale juice in my mouth, and, whoa, that's a nice flavor, And I had to learn as I go. And we had chickens because we had healthy eggs. I knew to ditch the meat. I knew to ditch the dairy, but we had these healthy eggs in our backyard. I grew their own kale for them. And then I'd find Rip's TED Talk on eggs and how they're liquid meat. So the chickens went to another home. But that's okay, I still had my coconut oil and my olive oil, the healthy oils. But what I found out is 1,300 olives go into one little bottle, and it's so processed, and all the good stuff is taken out of an olive, and you're left with nothing but fat. But that's okay. I have my cashews and my avocados, right? They're whole plant food. So they became my new burgers, right? And I just started eating by the pounds cashews, avocados, 4 or 5 at a time. Right? And then I stumble on Jeff Novak's calorie density chart. I'm like, crap. These people won't let me do anything. So finally, I figured out a way I could eat to make everyone happy, and I came up with my own diet. But a couple days later, I was on nutritionfacts.org, and I found out that there's actually problems with spring water versus bottled water. So that's kind of a joke. But so just like the food kind of evolved and kind of snowballed, so did my activity. And one day, I was feeling a lot better. I was feeling really good. And Heather says to me, hey, do you want to go for a walk? And I said, why would you go for a walk? Like, what did you do to the car? And she goes, no, I just want to go get air. I want to go get some fresh air. So we went for a walk. The goal was to walk about 1.5 miles. I made it about 3/4 of a mile, and I couldn't go anymore. I sat down on a rock, and Heather and the kids came around with a car and picked me up. Took me back home. Probably 2 days before I could even get on my feet again, iced down, bunch of anti-inflammatories. But I went, and something inside me wanted to go back. And the better I ate, the more stuff I was starting to do. I've always been an outdoorsman. I loved hiking, so I started finding trails. And I would just walk, and I would just set a goal to do a little bit more than I had done the day before. And those half-mile walks and mile walks turned into 5-mile walks. And then I got my family involved. I'm like, you guys got to see some of this cool stuff that I'm seeing. Instead of sitting on the sideline, I actually got to join my kids. Instead of watching a basketball roll by me that I couldn't pick up, I'm going on walks with my daughter and hikes with my son. And I'm starting to be part of a family again. And then one day, I saw one of my friends had climbed a high peak in the Adirondacks, and I wanted to climb one really bad. And I told him I would give myself a year to climb a high peak. The problem is the braces I was in, they were like immobilizers, so they kind of locked my knees out. So I actually had my doctor send me to a person that could fit me for braces, like custom braces. So they made castings of my legs. They sent them to California, and they gave me custom braces so I could actually bend my legs, and I started doing stairs. Exactly what the doctors had told me not to do my whole life. But I knew if I climbed enough stairs that I could get up that mountain. So this is probably another one of those dominoes that tipped in my life, because in 2012, I summited Big Slide Mountain. It was the hardest thing. Thank you. I think it took almost 12 hours. It was about 4,000 feet of climb and about 9-mile hike, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I actually thought I was going to die a couple times, but I made it. And I started seeing that, maybe things that I thought were impossible weren't really impossible. And then I went and got my wife and kids, and I'm like, you got to see this. And the more I went down to the Adirondacks and the more I climbed, it just became so enjoyable that I was climbing 2 and 3 high peaks in a day. I was feeling awesome, and all this time I'm eating, better and better food and doing more and more research and eating more and more greens. And what was happening, I didn't know it at the time, but the inflammation was just going out of my body. I had literally almost extra fingers growing out. I had so much arthritis, and it was dissolving right before my eyes. Again, I probably didn't really put all this stuff together until now. But I saw this ad for Tough Mudder on TV, and I thought it would be super cool to do that. So I asked Heather, and she said, absolutely not. I don't like to get dirty. So I convinced her sister and her sister's husband to do it, and then by default, she had to join me. So we were able to complete a Tough Mudder together in 2013, which was super cool. And when we were doing it, I noticed I kind of want to run a little bit. So I said, hey, Heather, you want to do a 5K? And she goes, isn't that longer than a marathon? And I'm like, I don't know, but we should try it. So we set up little water stops around, and to this day, this is the most emotional finish line I've ever crossed. People actually thought we got some really bad news when we crossed this finish line together, and it was a super, super cool day. So on the way home, I kind of nudged her, and I'm like, hey, how about a 10K? And she's like, no way, you're nuts. So a couple months later, we crossed the finish line for our first 10K together. It was a super special moment because we got to give back to Roswell and hospice. And then on the way home, I kind of gave her another nudge, and I'm like, how about a half marathon? She goes, I'm out. But, the funny thing, I had a handicap parking pass that was going to expire in September. And I thought to myself, how cool would it be to run a half marathon while I can park legally in a handicapped spot? So I knew this was going to be super hard. So what I did is I took my handicap pass, and I put my dad and her mom on there and my family, and I taped that thing around my waist, and I finished my first half marathon. Thank you. And then I picked up a bike, and I found out these people do these 100-mile bike races, so I decided I'm going to do a 100-mile bike race. So I was able to cross the finish line for my first century with my wife's sister in 2015. And, I didn't know it at the time. I knew the stronger I got, I was actually counteracting where my ligaments and joints were loose. I was getting stronger, so I started lifting weights. And I was able to deadlift 500 pounds with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And you got to understand, like I couldn't get keys off my table without dislocating a few years ago. So what I found is the inflammation left my body, the atrophy's gone, and now I start building muscle to take over where my joints are weak. And it really was a super, super effective recipe. So I signed up for a full marathon and was able to do that. And that was super fun, kind of. It hurt really bad. But then this last August, I was able to complete my first Ironman 70.3. Thank you. And all these things were just because I started doing a little bit more than I had done the day before. And this stuff is all super cool, and people like to hear, and they like to clap, and all that stuff is cool. And I have awards, and I have stuff from legislation. I don't even know what it really means. And, I'm getting filmed and stuff, and that stuff is cool. But, you know, can I tell you what, like, really matters to me? In fact, she's going to kill me. Kid, you want to come up here? But you can't cry. Thanks. She's so, this is my rock right here. You can come out here. They're too far away to bite. So this is what's important to me. This actually is a super special time. We actually just got back from the Ford Museum to try to recreate some of this. But the last time I was in Detroit, the only time I've ever been in Detroit until now, we took this picture at the Henry Ford Museum. And we were staying in a hotel, and I can remember I tried a couple times to get my socks and shoes on. I just couldn't do it. And you know, the bathrooms are like 3 feet, and we got kids screaming, and everyone's trying to get out. And I got to sit on the bed going, can you help me? And I had a flashback to this picture a few years later, because Heather had gotten up. She finished eating an apple. She got up, and she was having trouble getting her arm on her backpack. And I helped her put her backpack on at 6,700 feet in the air. One of my dreams was always to climb the Mount Washington, which is the highest peak on the East Coast, and we did it together, which was super cool. And, you know, a few months later, I told you she'd never run a half marathon. I got to pace her for her first half marathon. And I'm going to be honest with you, this is the last time I could ever use the word pace her, because she smokes me now. Like, she's so fast. So that's super cool, but don't go anywhere yet. So then later on, she went from the half marathon in October. She completed the Niagara Falls International Marathon, her first marathon, so that's super cool. And then a few weeks after that, I said, hey, how about a 50K? This one is longer than a marathon. And we were able to complete a 50K trail race with 5,000 feet of climb together. And it was just an awesome, awesome day. So this is actually the first time I'm ever talking about this. So I'm going to try not to cry. But you know that picture I showed you in the beginning, my first walk? This picture, if I can, no. Oh, this is Leadville, by the way. We did Leadville last year, and one of the things that kind of got to me that was super special, Heather always thought in the middle of the night I was dying because I'd stop breathing. I had sleep apnea so bad, and she would shake me. And I realized when we ran this trail race in Leadville, we were 13,000 feet in the air, and never once did she worry if I was breathing. She never even asked about it. But I want to take you back to this picture, this walk, this first walk, to give you an idea how this came full circle. I don't know, this walk might very well have saved my life, because 10 days ago, our family assembled again on the trail, and it's probably the next time after this one, and we finished together my first 50-mile ultra, and my family was there to pace me. That's the stuff that matters. Thank you. Love you. Some of the other stuff that is kind of cool is I get to share my story everywhere, and not only do I get to share it to adults, I get to work in high schools teaching kids about addiction and nutrition and how they relate. You know, medically, my cholesterol was always over 300 on medicine. It's 117 now. My triglycerides in 2009 were 259. Right now, they're sitting at about 74. On top of that, my insurance company spent $20,000. This is not medical bills. This is pharmaceuticals. This is pharmaceutical costs for 2009. The last 2 years combined that I have data on, 2015 and 16 combined, they spent $120 on B12. That's the stuff that's important to me. The fentanyl, the drugs, the alcohol, the fast food, it's not only gone, it's been replaced by me teaching other people how to do what I did. And that's what's important. You know, unfortunately, we have some stereotypes in our community that plant-based or vegan people are these weak, you know, undernourished things, and that we eat this. We lick lawnmowers, right? But I want to tell you that some of the best athletes in the world, world-class athletes, are plant-based and vegan. Right? Germany's strongest man, Patrick Bobumian, like he hasn't had animal products in almost a decade. And our food is delicious. Like this is food right off my table. It doesn't take long at all to prepare. I throw stuff together. It's colorful. It's all alive. It's all living. And you know, I did this for my health. But as I'm learning as I go, you know, it's like a check all box thing. Because, you know, not only is it great for my health and everyone else's health, it's good for the environment, the animals. You know, this factory farming. Farming is not what it used to be. And the economy. Again, go back to if we could get a PBNSG in every city, do you realize what would happen to our economy? It's mind-blowing what would happen. So I guess at the end of the day, the only question I have to leave for you is if finding gratitude in a plant-based lifestyle can take a sick, almost dead, 400-pound addict that was crippled and turn him into a happy guy that loves life to its fullest, what can it do for you? Thank you.
Well, welcome, Joel Kahn. Powerful, one of the most powerful. This is the 4th year anniversary of PBNSG. 4 years ago this month, Paul and I kicked off a little tiny meeting that overwhelmed us, and we're so glad you're here. How many here for the first time? Well, thank you. Come back over and over and over, and tell your friends all over the country. I normally give a minute or two on scientific update. I'm going to skip it because the stories are so good. I just want to tell on my personal level, if you know Rich Roll, one of our guests here about a year and a half ago, the leading plant-based podcast in the world. I had the honor of being on his podcast last week. I also had the honor that it hit #1 in the world on iTunes, which is a very rare place to be. So check it out. It's all about ketogenic diets, the pros, the cons, the plant-based. And I'm being given permission to take over Forks Over Knives Facebook page Friday at 3 p.m. to do a little teaching seminar, which I'm sort of tickled about. That's more than 1 million Facebook followers. So if you have a little time on Friday, they're advertising it all over the internet, talking about heart disease and plant-based diets. So I'm a proud graduate of the University of Michigan School of Medicine, summa cum laude, and we call ourselves the Harvard of the West. But once in a while, that doesn't fly. And when I introduce Robert Ostfeld, it's because it's humbling, because he has credentials that go beyond anything. He's a friend of a few years now. He's been very kind and invited me out to his amazing preventive cardiology conference in the Bronx in Montefiore. He attended University of Pennsylvania, one of the finest undergraduate schools, and also achieved that summa cum laude degree. On to Yale, not a bad place. Former U of M professor Harold Shapiro. No, that's Princeton. I take that back. Just Yale. No Harold Shapiro story. On to Harvard, and he got stuck at Harvard. He just Harvard. So Harvard Cardiology Fellowship, Preventive Medicine Fellowship, a master's at Harvard. Sort of a bright guy that makes you wonder, what's going on in that brain. And then to apply it, he's so practical when he's doing what he's going to tell us about. It's a tremendous honor to bring up New York's best plant-based single ladies cardiologist, Dr. Robert Ostfeld.
Line it up. Thank you. Joel, thank you for that incredibly generous introduction. And we had a wonderful time at Joel's restaurant, Green Space, last night. It's an incredible honor to be with each of you here tonight. And the plant-based nutrition support group is a real, and the work that Paul and his team have done, and each of you, it's an incredible inspiration. And it is really the model organization for plant-based nutrition So a real kudos to all of you. It's an incredible inspiration to be here with you. So, Confessions of a Reformed Cardiologist, a plant-based diet, and your heart. Oops, I wrote at. When I was a kid, I had a couple of brothers who died from an incurable disease. And ever since then, I've been moving toward going into medicine. And one thing led to another, and I became a cardiologist. And I had the opportunity to train with really incredible people along the way. Learned all about procedures and medications, which can be very important, but very little about nutrition. And when I finished up, I kind of knew that a Mediterranean-style diet was healthful, but I couldn't really define it. And frankly, if you told me about plant-based nutrition then, I would have thought it was weird. And so then I went down to Montefiore to start to work as a cardiologist, and I did all the things that I was trained to do. Guideline-based medications and procedures, which can be very important, maybe a Mediterranean-style diet. And yeah, people got a little bit better, but not a lot. And I didn't go into medicine to help people get a little bit better. I wanted transformational change. I was really becoming disillusioned. But right about that time, I stumbled across the impact of a plant-based diet, was really taken by it. One thing led to another, and started our cardiac wellness program at Montefiore with the goal of preventing and reversing disease with a plant-based diet. And I say disease, not just heart disease, because yeah, it's good for your heart, but it's good for you for dozens and dozens of other reasons. And I've been a cardiologist now for about 15 years, and outside of a medical emergency, like somebody gets shot and has to be put back together again, I've never seen anything come close to the breadth and depth of benefits that a plant-based diet provides. I mean, we literally have patients crying tears of joy in our office. They feel so much better. And that reminds me, it's an incredible honor to share this stage with the exceptionally inspirational speakers that came on here before me, so kudos to all of them. There was a number of cases that helped me realize early on that we were on a good path, and I want to share a couple of them with you. There was this one woman, she had had a heart attack, part of the heart muscle had died, and she was being seen at another hospital, and they had recommended bypass surgery, and which was a very evidence-driven, perfectly medically reasonable recommendation at the time, but she didn't want to have it, and that's cool, the patient's the boss. And so they put her on all the appropriate medications, and she went home, and somehow she found us. And at the time, she could really only walk across the room, and then she'd get short of breath because of all that cholesterol disease in the blood vessels that fed her heart with blood. And she was already on all the appropriate medications, so really all we had left was to switch her lifestyle. So we put her on a plant-based diet, a whole food plant-based diet. Fast forward about 3-4 months, she lost about 15-20 pounds. Her LDL bad cholesterol fell an additional 70 points, and she went from being able to walk only across the room to about 20 to 25 minutes on a treadmill. She was doing great. And so, but then it kind of got a little weird. Like I had trouble reaching her by phone, and I didn't really know what was going on. And about 3 months later, I get this call from yet another hospital. She had had chest discomfort, and she was about to have bypass surgery. I'm like, what's going on? And what I later learned is that there was this major rift in her family. And half of her family thought the plant-based diet was great. And the other half thought it was the opposite of great. And she was living with the half of the family who thought the plant-based diet was great and eating that way during those 3 or so months when she got better. But then she moved to live with the half of the family who thought it was the opposite of great. She went back to her prior eating habits, and over the course of around 3 or so months, decompensated and had bypass surgery. So for me, that was an incredible N of 1 about how amazingly quickly and profoundly this can help your health improve, but also how quickly things can go bad if you revert. So I wanted to share another case. This is a gentleman, he's about 60, and he started having chest discomfort, and he, it started when he would walk a bit, and then sometimes it would even happen when he was sitting still. He went to go see his primary care doctor, and he had a stress test, where we have people, run on a treadmill, we take a picture of the heart, and, his stress test was positive. Like, it's only in medicine that the word positive like means something bad. But anyway, so it showed evidence of poor blood flow to the heart muscle. And so they had recommended a cardiac catheterization and various medications, but he was not interested in that. And he said, Doc, I don't want to take any of those cholesterol-lowering pills, and I don't want anything stuck in me. So no medications, he wouldn't even take an aspirin. And of course, no procedures. And so this was him right at that time. He could walk maybe 1 to 3 blocks, and then he would stop because of chest discomfort. He's a little overweight, a little hypertensive, LDL cholesterol real high. So what do we have left? Well, we put him on a plant-based diet. If it has a face, or comes from something with a face, don't eat it. And so this is the kind of foods that he ate, all that you all are very familiar with. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna circle back a little bit later to see how this guy did. So we're gonna talk about a handful of things along the way. And so we're gonna talk a bit about the scope of the problem, and by problem, I mean atherosclerosis or cholesterol disease in the blood vessels that feeds our heart with blood. We'll talk a bit about the pathophysiology or why this happens, why might a plant-based diet be helpful, and then as time allows, we'll go beyond the heart, a scary place for a cardiologist. Okay, oops. So for those who saw that, just don't answer. So I need a little audience participation. What percentage of 12 to 14-year-olds in the US do you think have early signs of cholesterol disease in the blood vessels that feed their hearts with blood? I think I heard somewhere between 8 and 100. And so you guys are excellent because you're absolutely right. It isn't, but you're better than the medical students I usually work with because they usually give me between 0 and 100%, but they're professional test takers. So, so it's about 65. About 65% of 12 to 14-year-olds in the US have early signs of cholesterol disease in the blood vessels that feed their heart with blood. And we know this from pathology studies of kids who died for other reasons. And as I look around the room, I'm pretty sure that we are all older than 12. I mean, maybe not emotionally, but like at least, numerically. So now, heart attacks, about 2 heart attacks happen every minute in the US. So maybe I've been speaking now for 8 minutes. That's 16 heart attacks. 16 heart attacks have happened. It's the #1 killer of adult men and adult women. Women are about 6 to 7 times more likely to die from from cardiovascular disease than they are from breast cancer. So it highlights the epidemiologic importance for women. It's an incredibly expensive disease, and about half of heart attacks happen in people with, quote, normal cholesterol levels. So in our country, where it is normal to die from heart disease, I think our entire notion of normal is anything but. So okay, that's the scope of the problem. Let's do a little pathophysiology. Why does this disease process happen? So these are courtesies of Dr. Klatt and Dr. Esselstyn. This is a coronary artery here, and it's a normal one. This is the center where the blood flows, the wall of the artery, and these, of course, are the endothelial cells. We want to treat them well. And so this is normal, and because I went to medical school, I can tell you that this is abnormal. And that's, I don't know if there are any Young Frankenstein fans, and a couple, I guess. So this is abnormal. It's a ton of cholesterol disease here, and a teeny tiny little hole for the blood to flow through. So you may know some people that go for a walk, they get chest discomfort, they have to stop, they take a pill under their tongue, and they can just keeps repeating itself again and again. Well, this is the kind of disease process that they have. So we want to prevent this from happening. This is courtesy of Dr. Esselstyn, who's been an incredible friend and mentor for me. And so these are arteries, and this is the wall of the artery. These are little cholesterol particles. So what happens is those endothelial cells get damaged. And whether that's through smoking, a toxic Western diet, pollution, inflammation, something damages those cells. And then these little cholesterol particles burrow across into the wall of the artery, exactly where you do not want them, and then they become oxidized and act like a splinter. So, if you've had a splinter, it gets all red and inflamed and painful. Well, it's the same kind of thing, except it's happening in the wall of your artery, and it makes the artery sicker every second of every day, creates more inflammation, more oxidative stress, damages the endothelial cells more cholesterol particles burrow across, more cells come in, and it just keeps on growing and growing. And this fibrous cap here, this little white line, that's the only thing separating all this atherosclerotic junk from the blood. And with all that inflammation, all that oxidative stress, this fibrous cap gets thinner and thinner and weaker, until some random Tuesday afternoon, it cracks. And then all of this atherosclerosis touches the blood, and it can make the blood clot, no more blood flow. That's a heart attack. That's an emergency. You want a stent right away when that happens. And you may have seen those like medical drama shows like ER. They say, oh my God, they're having a STEMI and a ST elevation MI. We have to rush them to the cath lab. And this is what's happening. The fibrous cap ruptured, and boom, they clotted off their whole artery. This is a histology picture of that process. This is the center of the artery where the blood flows, all the atherosclerotic plaque rupture, clotted off the artery. This person, of course, did not survive. This is a picture of a heart, a coronary artery where the blood flows to feed the heart with blood. This person had plaque rupture, a clot, and of course, died. So the scope of the problem, it's obscene. Pathophysiology, we touched on it a little bit. So why a plant-based diet? Why might a plant-based diet be helpful? So we're going to go through a handful of different types of evidence. We'll do some epidemiology or population studies. We'll look at those. We'll touch on trimethylamine oxide or TMAO, a bit more about the endothelial cells, some interventional studies, and some other information. So what I like to do is to look to where heart disease is not to get a clue as to why that might be. So we're going to do a bit of a world tour. We're going to start in China from the China study, Dr. Campbell's incredible work. And basically in that study from the 70s and 80s with information, they looked at about 6,500 people across China. And basically what they found is the fewer animal products people ate, the less disease they had. And it just kept on going. And it wasn't just heart disease. It was cancer. It was bone diseases. It was inflammatory diseases. Okay, but maybe that was just the 70s and 80s in China or something. Let's fast forward to modern day China. This is a really awesome study done by this guy, Dr. Du, where they looked at about 450,000 people over 3 million person years of follow-up. So if you follow me for 1 year, that's 1 person year of follow-up. They have over 3 million person years of follow-up. And they asked, what happens if you eat more fruit? That's it. What happens if you eat more fruit? So it turns out good things happen if you eat more fruit. The more fruit people ate, the less heart disease, less stroke, they live longer, blood pressure went down, blood sugar went down. I'm kind of getting tired of hearing how fruit causes diabetes. But along those lines, Dr. Du and his team took a little deeper dive into diabetes. And so in this analysis, they had about 480,000 people, and they asked, what happens if you eat more fruit? If you eat more fruit, your hazard of developing diabetes goes down. More fruit was associated with less diabetes, but hey, what if you had diabetes when the study started? Well, 30,000 people did. 30,000 people had diabetes when the study started. They ate more fruit. They did better, fewer complications from diabetes, and their mortality was lower during the study period. Okay, let's bounce to South Africa. This is a really interesting study done by Dr. Burkitt of Burkitt's lymphoma fame. And what he did is he noticed that the South African black population had a really low rate of heart disease. And they were eating much more of a plant-based diet. And the South African white population living right next door, but eating a Western diet, milk, meat, had among the highest rates of heart disease in the world. So he wanted to quantify heart disease rates in the South African black population. So there was this hospital in Johannesburg where the South African black population would go. So what he did is he looked at the medical records in that hospital over 10 years. And they had about 40,000 admissions a year, so about 400,000 people, 400,000 admissions over 10 years. And he looked for how many cases of heart disease were diagnosed. And after 10 years, he found 30. 30 cases. Now, there could be detection biases, selection biases, sure, but I could take you to the cardiac wing of Montefiore right now, and there are more than 30 cases of heart disease there right now. Okay, let's bounce to the US. This is a really fascinating study of over 130,000 people with about 3.5 million person-years of follow-up, done by Dr. Song. And what he asked is if you replace just 3% of your calories from animal protein with 3% of calories from plant-based protein, what happens? Is it good? Is it not good? Turns out it's good. So if you replace just 3% of your calories from processed red meat with plant-based protein, your hazard of mortality fell by 34%, very significant. If you're to the left of this line, it's statistically significant. How about unprocessed red meat? 12%. Poultry, 6%. Fish, 6%. Eggs, 19%. Dairy, 8%. Very impressive. Okay, let's bounce to England. And this is the Health Surveys for England study. And they looked at about 65,000 people, followed them for almost 8 years. And they looked at servings of fruits and vegetables per day, 1, 2, 3, 4, on and on. But they couldn't look beyond 7 because so few people did that the statistics fell apart. But the more servings of fruit and vegetables you ate each day was associated with living longer. It just kept on going, 5, 6, 7. Not just fewer strokes, not just fewer heart attacks, but associated with living longer. Now, we're going to bounce back to the US, the CARDIA study, the coronary artery risk determinants in youth study. This is a very interesting study. In this analysis, they took about 2,500 people at about 25 years of age, and they put them into tertiles of fruit and vegetable consumption, the lowest, the middle, and the highest amount of fruit and vegetable consumption. And then, 20 years later, they took a CAT scan of their heart. And they looked for coronary calcium. And if you have coronary calcium, that means you have atherosclerosis. So if you were in the highest tertile of fruit and vegetable consumption when you were 25 versus the lowest, 20 years later, you had about a 26% lower odds of having coronary artery disease. Okay, we're going to bounce, we're going to stay in the US and add Canada. This is the Seventh-day Adventist study, about 60,000 people. And the Seventh-day Adventists are a religious organization. They treat their bodies like a temple. And they have a variety of healthy lifestyle measures. And even those who eat kind of a Western diet, on average, eat a much healthier style Western diet than the average person in the US does. And so they looked at the percent with diabetes. They looked at non-vegetarians, semi-vegetarians, pesco-vegetarians, lacto-ovo-vegetarians, and vegans. You can see the vegans had the lowest percentage of diabetes. How about BMI, or body mass index? The lowest and the only one in the normal category was in the vegans. Okay, this is a really cool study. This is a really cool study by a guy named Satija with about 200,000 or so people, 4.8 million person-years of follow-up. It's impressive. And what they looked at is, when it comes to plant-based dieting, the devil is in the details. The term whole foods, plant-based, is important. Whole foods is important. And so what they looked at, and I'll explain why. So what they looked at is here, this line here, that's a plant-based diet. So along here is eating more of a plant-based diet. And so if you ate more of a plant-based diet, your hazard for coronary heart disease went down. But you could eat sugar cookies and white bread all day and be plant-based. And we're really not going to argue that that's healthy. So then they split the plant-based diet up into an unhealthy plant-based diet, the sugar cookies, the white flour, and a healthy whole food plant-based diet, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and then they reanalyzed it. Well, this red line is the healthy plant-based diet, even a lower hazard of heart disease. And the unhealthy plant-based diet, the more you ate of it, an increased hazard of heart disease. And then they looked at servings of food categories consumed per day, and if you ate healthy plant-based foods, your hazard for coronary heart disease went down. If you ate more animal foods, this red line, it went up, but almost to the same degree as a less healthy plant-based diet. So a less healthy plant-based diet, in this analysis, looked about the same as eating more and more animal products. So the devil is in the details. Whole Foods is coined by Dr. Campbell. Okay, this is a busy slide, but it's really awesome. And this is to remind me, now we all have our genes. You know, they make our eye color, our hair color, we can't change that. But one of the pushbacks that I often get from my patients is, you know, well, it runs in my family. It's all in my genes. There's nothing I can really do. Well, genes run in families, but so does lifestyle. So in this really awesome analysis, what they did is they found about 26 genetic cardiovascular disease risk markers. And not surprisingly, the more bad genes you had from a cardiovascular standpoint, the worse you did. And they split people into thirds: the highest genetic risk, the intermediate genetic risk, and the lowest genetic risk. But then what's really cool is they split people into 3 levels of healthy lifestyle: the least healthy, the middle healthy, and the most healthy. And this is the highest genetic risk group right here. And you can see the least healthy group with the same kind of genetic risk, if you had an unfavorable lifestyle and switched to and those had a favorable, had about a 50% lower rate of coronary events. So you can't change your genes, but you can change your lifestyle. But the threshold to get into the favorable lifestyle was pretty low. And they looked, okay, so they had an exercise threshold. And to get into the healthiest lifestyle category, you had to exercise at least once a week. And you had to eat above the median healthful diet. So just like the 50th percentile. So imagine if you exercised 4 times a week and you ate in the 90th percentile, which I hope everyone here does and beyond in terms of health. Imagine how much more this would be reduced. Okay, we did a little bit of epidemiology. Let's talk about TMAO, or trimethylamine oxide. TMAO is not your friend. Higher levels of TMAO in your body is associated with more prostate cancer, makes your blood more sticky, more diabetes, more death, more heart disease, more heart failure. Okay, so in a very interesting study, scientists fed omnivores, meaning eat everything, and vegans a steak. Vegans ate steak for the study. And what happened is the omnivores made a whole bunch of trimethylamine oxide, but the vegans eating the same steak made very, very little. So what's going on? What's the difference? So what's going on is our gut microbiome, our gut bacteria is what's going on. We each have about 1 trillion gut bacteria, and maybe there are a couple hundred people in the audience or here tonight, so there's a couple hundred trillion gut bacteria hanging out with us right now. And when you eat animal-based foods, you select for a slightly different gut bacteria profile than when you eat a plant-based diet. And it is that difference that accounts for the reduction in TMAO production when you eat a plant-based diet. Okay, so the thing that the gut bacteria was interacting with in the steak is L-carnitine. Well, L-carnitine is structurally similar to choline. Who cares? Well, choline is a required nutrient, but choline is in fish. Choline is in dairy. Choline is in chicken. Choline is in egg yolks. So when you eat those things, it also leads to the formation of trimethylamine oxide. But choline is a required nutrient. Okay, but you can eat plants and get it, so no big deal. But Dr. Ostfeld, you just said if you eat choline, you're going to make TMAO. But when you get it from plants, you select for much less of the unhealthful gut bacteria. So you get the choline that you need, making very, very little TMAO, and you're bathing your body in dozens and dozens of other awesome phytonutrients. Okay, epidemiology, trimethylamine oxide, endothelial cells. Okay, what's the circumference of the Earth in miles? 25,000. So how many miles of blood vessels do we have in our bodies? Yep, 60,000, exactly. So you can imagine if you treat your blood vessels well, you treat every square millimeter of your body well. And I know that factoid because I saw it on the George Washington University Cardiology webpage. I didn't count it myself. And these are endothelial cells. They make nitric oxide, which is our friend. And nitric oxide helps our blood vessels dilate. So if you go for a jog or something and you need more blood flow to your leg, it helps them dilate. It's anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, makes the blood less likely to stick, and less sticky. And when you eat a plant-based diet, it enables your endothelial cells to make more nitric oxide, which is a good thing. And if I were to take all the endothelial cells out of my body and lay them on the ground, I would fill up about 7 tennis courts worth. We have a lot of endothelial cells. This is a great comic, Halfway through his Hearty Man breakfast, Dwayne thought he heard some of his smaller arteries slamming shut. Some of you may be familiar with this comic. I think this is interesting for a variety of reasons. First of all, he's right. His arteries are slamming shut. But now the first part is the Hearty Man, this whole notion of a Hearty Man. You know, it's evolved over time, but I think we can agree it's, a steak-eating, cigar-smoking guy is hearty, which is, of course, the exact opposite of what you need to do if you actually want to be hearty. But he thought he heard some of his smaller arteries slamming shut. And that's right. And this brings me to great work by Dr. Robert Vogel that many of you are probably familiar with, and he looked at blood vessel function. And so what he would do is he'd inflate a blood pressure cuff up on the arm all the way, no more blood flow to the hand, and then he lets go and he looks at the artery right here. Normally it dilates up, that's normal. And if it's abnormal, it doesn't. So he took young, healthy men and fed them either whole grain cereal or hash browns and sausage. And he looked, or another kind of breakfast meat, and he looked at blood vessel function. These are young, healthy men. Those who had the whole grain cereal, blood vessels dilated up, no problem. Those who had the breakfast meat and hash browns, blood vessels didn't dilate up. It took about 6 hours, and then they finally dilated up okay. But then you know what time it is. It's lunchtime. And it's chicken parmesan, and it's dinner, it's pizza, breakfast, scrambled eggs. It's meal after meal. It's like Mike Tyson is in there pounding away at your endothelial cells, and it's no wonder they give out over time. But the cool thing is that I heard that Mike Tyson is now vegan. So I guess that means, so no more ears for Iron Mike. And I heard ahead of time that he was not going to be in the audience. That's the only reason I said that joke. But you know what? It's not just your blood vessel function. Asthmatics are more likely to get readmitted to the hospital with bronchospasm, eating more animal-based foods. And non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is now the most common reason for liver failure in the US. And when you eat one, and that's mediated by an unhealthful, typical Western diet. And when you eat one unhealthful meal, your liver transiently looks metabolically just like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So one unhealthy meal messes up your blood vessels, lung function, liver function. It's pretty impressive. It's transient, goes away after a few hours, but it's impressive what one meal can do. Okay, epidemiology, TMAO, endothelial cells. Let's talk about some interventional studies. These are the kinds of foods that they were eating in those studies, stuff you guys all know. And this brings me to great work by Dr. Ornish. And in his lifestyle heart study, he randomized 48 people, small study, but really impressive. 48 people with stable cholesterol blockages in the blood vessels that feed their heart with blood. And he looked at the size of those blockages and randomized them into intensive lifestyle therapy, which was mostly a plant-based diet, psychosocial support, and exercise, versus standard care, whatever your cardiologist says. Fast forward a year, the blockages began to shrink in the intervention arm and grow in the conventional care arm. Fast forward 5 years, that continued, more shrinkage, more growth, and you had about a 2.5 higher odds of having a cardiovascular problem if you were in the standard care arm. Very impressive stuff, and not surprisingly, the more you adhered to the healthier lifestyle, the more shrinkage you had in your cholesterol blockages. So this brings me to great work, of course, by Dr. Esselstyn. This is his case series of about almost 200 patients with stable heart disease. They were about 63, followed them for about 4 years, and about 90% adhere to the whole food plant-based, of course, no oil diet. And of those 177 adherent patients, 112 had angina like chest pain from poor blood flow to the heart muscle. It improved in 104, and we see this very frequently in our clinic as well. 27 avoided previously suggested stent and bypass surgery, and we've had a number of patients avoid those as well. And they lost on average about 18 pounds. And of those 177, a major cardiac event judged to be recurrent disease because they already had disease was 0.6%. Pretty impressive. Let's compare that to the 21 who did not adhere to the healthier lifestyle with stable heart disease. 13 had a recurrent event, that's 62. 62% versus 0.6%. It's subtle. Let's compare, I'm kidding, of course. Let's compare this to the PREDIMED study. And the PREDIMED study was a really impressive study of a Mediterranean-style diet in people with risk factors for, but not known heart disease, risk factors for. And they randomized them to a Mediterranean-style diet versus what was essentially a Western diet. And not surprisingly, the Mediterranean-style diet did better. Diet's a continuum. But in the Mediterranean-style arm, in people with no known heart disease, just risk factors, they had about a 3.6% cardiovascular event rate. In Esselstyn's study, with known heart disease, he had a 0.6% event rate. Now, it's comparing different studies, apples and oranges, but it's very interesting. And that's the reference for PREDIMED. They did a post hoc afterwards analysis of the PREDIMED study, and they said, well, what happens if you ate even more fruits and vegetables? Is that a good thing? Turns out it was. So among omnivorous subjects at high cardiovascular risk, better conformity with a food pattern that emphasized plant-derived foods was associated with the reduced risk of all-cause mortality. This is echoed by the EPIC study, the European Prospective Investigation to Cancer Nutrition study. In that analysis, every standard deviation increase in fruit and vegetable consumption was associated with a 14% reduction in death. Okay, and I want to, what do I have here? Yeah, I want to highlight the COURAGE trial. This is a really important study within cardiology. And they took people with stable heart disease and stable cholesterol blockages. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because I want to compare it to Esselstyn's study, also with stable blockages. So in the COURAGE trial, they randomized people to either maximal medical therapy, and please be a little healthier, versus maximal medical therapy, please be a little healthier, and a stent. And after 5 years, didn't make a difference. The stent didn't make you live longer, didn't protect you from a heart attack. This is stable disease, not a heart attack. So to me, stents seem palliative. But they had about a 19% event rate at about 4 or 5 years. Let's compare Esselstyn's study to the COURAGE study. Total cholesterol in Esselstyn, 237, and a combination of lifestyle and statins, they got down to 137. In COURAGE, started at 174 down to about 141. The LDL cholesterol, pretty similar in both. But look at the event rates. In the Esselstyn study, 0.6, in COURAGE, 19. How do we account for this difference? Well, I don't know the right answer to that, but my hypothesis is when you get to an LDL in the 70s on a diet that includes a diet that includes plant-based foods, yeah, it's good for your LDL cholesterol, but it bathes your body in a panoply of other nutrients that accounts for this difference. That's my hypothesis. Right, so plants or burgers, you choose. This is a picture of bypass surgery. This is the patient on their back, their face here. This is the heart. And what I'm about to say has been said. And, you know, it's great that we can do this. But, you know, when I ask my patients to eat a plant-based diet, to eat kale, quite honestly, some people tell me that I'm extreme. That it's somehow extreme that I'm encouraging my patients to eat this way. You see, I think it's extreme when someone saws my chest in half, stops my heart, and takes a vein from my leg and stitches it into my heart. Like, when did the world turn upside down that eating kale is extreme and bypass surgery is normalized? Oh yeah, this is a nice randomized controlled trial in diabetes done by Dr. Barnard. 99 patients, 22 weeks. a plant-based diet versus the American Diabetes Association diet. Guess which one won? Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, quote that you used before, let food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food. So doc, I did everything they told me to do. Why did I have a heart attack? Or why did I have another one? Well, that's because we have not been telling people the right things to do. This is a great quote by Dr. DeVries, and it's not a great quote just because he's a cardiologist, but it struck me as a peculiar paradox that guidelines, those are documents that advise us how to practice and treat things. Guidelines highlight the primary importance of nutrition and lifestyle, yet the physicians who are expected to implement these guidelines receive absolutely no education in these areas during their residency and subspecialty training. And that's unfortunately a very common theme throughout the US. Paul and the Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group and Robin over at Wayne State are doing an amazing job of spreading this message into Wayne State Medical School. We've had the opportunity to spread it into Einstein, the medical school that I'm affiliated with, and there are other pockets of change, but not enough. But times are changing, slowly. But y'all remember, well, the Super Bowl was on just a few weeks ago, and you all remember that great broccoli commercial, right? Like, of course you don't, because there was none. You know, there's no big broccoli. So you can slice or dice what I'm about to say in a variety of ways. These are advertising dollars spent in 2004. The top 8 fast food chains spent $2.3 billion, and there was a federal program at the time, some of you may recall, 5 a day. You eat 5 servings of fruit and vegetables a day. So 4.9 million. So I couldn't make sense of those numbers in my head, so I turned them into seconds. 2.3 billion seconds and 4.9 million seconds. That's 73 years versus 2 months. The times are changing. So Dr. Kim Williams, I believe he spoke to your group, past president of the American College of Cardiology, a remarkable cardiologist. This is a quote from him. I recommend a plant-based diet because I know it's going to lower their blood pressure, improve their insulin sensitivity, meaning improve diabetes, and decrease their cholesterol. So times are changing. Oh yeah, we're going to circle back to our guy. Our guy who didn't want to have anything stuck in him and would not take any medications, not even an aspirin. So, okay, fast forward about 3 months or so. He lost weight, his weight's normal, his blood pressure is normal, his LDL cholesterol fell about 70 or so points, and then he could walk about a mile and he'd have to stop because of chest discomfort. Then, fast forward about a year, cholesterol's low, blood pressure's good, he could jog about 2 miles. And I bumped into him about 8 months ago, and he jogs now 4 to 5 miles and stops because he gets bored. But the question that I typically get is, yeah, Dr. Ostfeld, you know, he's doing great, and numbers look good, but what about the HDL? That's the good cholesterol. That fell. What's the story there? Well, it's really interesting, actually. And epidemiologically, we know that higher HDL levels are associated with doing better. But HDL may be falling off its pedestal very soon because it may be more of a marker and less of a mediator of disease. There have been a number of randomized controlled trials, 4 or 5 or so, where we've been able to raise HDL cholesterol a lot, but it didn't do anything. People didn't get better. And in one study, they got worse. But it turns out that HDL is really a double-edged sword. When you eat more healthfully, it is anti-atherosclerotic, but when you eat less healthfully, it can be pro-atherosclerotic. And it's that detail that really matters. And there's something called HDL efflux capacity, or its ability to work as a vacuum cleaner and suck cholesterol out of the wall of the blood vessels. And when you eat more healthfully, that efflux capacity gets better. And a number of studies have shown that it's that efflux capacity, totally independent of the number, of your absolute number of HDL particles, but it's that efflux capacity, which improves when you eat more healthfully, that is the real mediator of benefit with HDL. So when I see this, I'm secretly happy, because to me it means the patient's doing it. Okay, epidemiology, world tour, TMAO, endothelial cells, interventional studies, some other data, the HDL we just talked about, and LDL oxidation, right. When those LDL particles burrow across the endothelial cells and land in the wall of the blood vessel, they become oxidized and act like a splinter. But it is harder to oxidize them when you eat a plant-based diet. Okay, so let's go somewhere scary for a cardiologist, which is, of course, beyond the heart. Oh, yes. So we're all used to doing a CAT scan for looking for a problem. Well, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we did a scan looking for something good? So that's the CAL scan. So what this is are things that are associated with improving or happening less often when you eat more toward a plant-based diet. So eating more toward a plant-based diet is associated with living longer. And you know, some of you may remember that Ice Bucket ALS challenge on social media from a few years ago. Well, eating a plant-based diet is associated, or more of a plant-based diet is associated with less ALS, less dementia, less cognitive decline, less stroke, less depression. It's associated with less acne. In fact, some investigators suggest that acne is so tightly linked to the Western diet that it's not really a vestige of teenage angst, but rather your body crying out for help from lack of nutrition. Fewer ear infections, less periodontal disease, less heartburn, less breast cancer, less heart disease, less obesity, less inflammation, less diabetes, less colon cancer, less constipation, less prostate cancer, improved sexual function in men and in women, improved athletic performance, less lower back pain, improved bone disease. Did I get most of them? I think so. And this is some data to back that up. Okay, these are nutrients in plant versus animal-based foods per 500 calories. These are plant-based foods, equal parts tomato, spinach, lima bean, peas, and potatoes. Animal-based foods, equal parts beef, pork, chicken, and whole milk. Cholesterol. You don't need to make a drop. Your body will make all you need. How about protein? Oh my God, my muscles are going to fall apart tomorrow. How about beta-carotene? It's subtle. Dietary fiber, your constipation will go away. You know, we have bones to keep us standing. Plants have fiber. How about iron? Oh my God, I'm going to become anemic tomorrow. Calcium, my bones are going to fall apart. Oh yeah, so this is kind of funny. So, I mean, exercise is an important part of our program too, and we encourage people to do that. And this is the Las Vegas Strip, and you can see that nobody takes the stairs. But that's okay, because I went to the American College of Cardiology conference. I'm like, come on, this can't really be happening. And I don't have the slide right here, but a buddy of mine a couple years ago went and sent me a picture because times are changing, and there was one person. Right. So this is great new work. Cancer is increasing among meat eaters. Vegetarians show the lowest mortality of all. This is from the New York Times in 1907. This is great work on prostate cancer, some of Dr. Ornish's work. And we have our genes. We can't change our genes, but we may be able to change which ones speak. And so what they did is they took people with early stage prostate cancer, biopsied the prostate, and put them on a much healthier lifestyle, nearly a plant-based diet, and biopsied the prostate about 3 months later. And they looked at what happened to gene expression. And many anti-cancer genes were upregulated in their expression after 3 months, and many pro-cancer genes were downregulated in their expression. So you can't change your genes, but you might be able to change which ones talk, making the healthy ones speak more loudly and the unhealthy ones speak more softly. It's pretty mind-blowing, but it gets even more mind-blowing because at least in animal models, that on-off switch, turning the healthy genes on and the unhealthy ones off, can be passed on to their kids and grandkids. So what an impressive responsibility. The food we eat today, it's important for our health, the environment, but maybe for our kids and grandkids as well. Okay, so data supportive of a plant-based diet. We did a bit of a world tour, TMAO, endothelial cells, interventional studies, HDL, LDL, some gene expression. I'll skip these two in the interest of time. And today, And I do want to mention one other aspect of our program. Today, no one can deny the possibility of adequate nutrition and the prolonged maintenance of health and vigor on a vegetarian diet. That's from the Journal of the American Medical Association in 1912, before the term vegan was even coined. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. It's ridiculous. This used to be in medical journals as an advertisement. And what I'm hoping is it won't take anywhere near as long for us to realize that eating much more of a plant-based diet is extremely healthy and take a much shorter period of time than it did in regard to smoking. So we talked about the scope of the problem. It's obscene. Some of the pathophysiology, why a plant-based diet. We went beyond the heart. A couple things I want to highlight is on October 6th, we have our second annual Preventive Cardiology Conference coming up at Montefiore. It'd be fantastic if you all could join. And one other aspect of our program, we have that outpatient arm, which has really been incredible. And one thing that we've been doing, and is maybe something that I know that there's a number of healthcare practitioners here in the audience, we also, what I used to do, I ran in the hospital too, and I would go walk around, and I would, tell an inpatient about a plant-based diet, and I'd leave, and 5 minutes later, dinner would get served, and it was chicken, and I was just totally undercut. And so I'm like, this is no good. So we worked with the head of nutrition and the head of food services, and we developed plant-based meals for our hospital. And so now, if you want, you can order plant-based meals for inpatients. Comes with a little handout with information, but that wasn't enough. I wanted them to have the handout so they have some context of what's going on, but that wasn't enough, so we needed some more educational component to it. So now we have the documentary film, Forks Over Knives, playing on continuous loop on the inpatient TVs that you can watch. So they can watch CBS, but they can also watch Forks Over Knives. So I walk in the patient's room, I can tell them about it, we order the meal, they get the handout, we put on Forks Over Knives. And this is now in front of, I think, about 2,000 patient beds, which is pretty cool. So, but it feels like I have my plant-based posse with me. And, I'd be very happy to talk with other systems about, what we did and to try and help them, replicate it if that's something they'd be interested in their system as well. So, great. It's an absolute honor to be with you all here tonight. This group is an inspiration. Thank you.